All right, everyone, welcome back to the Nerdy Pastor. And typically in our content section, we do a number of different things. There's obviously good book resources, there's good kind of theological discussions, but also part of our content historically has been top 10 lists on pop culture. And one of those top 10 lists is, of course, the top 10 Zelda games of all time since 1987 to present. So older than my featured guest today, but my featured guest is as invested as anyone I've ever met on Zelda. So I thought I would bring him in for a little bit of a content share on Zelda this afternoon. So just a little introduction of why we've got Cole here with us. So Cole, tell us real quickly your age, kind of where you're from, kind of a little bit about yourself, and your love for Zelda.
I am 13. I'm Cole. I was born in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Oklahoma stuff, but
Yes,
this
there
is
are.
Texas.
Sorry.
So,
It's true.
yeah, I'm an OU fan, and he's an OSU fan, but we're still friends.
I love OU still. I just don't love them when they play Bedlam. But and you also, I mean, even only 13 years old, you are heavily invested in Zelda. Tell us about your love for Zelda. Why do you love the Zelda franchise?
Well, it was just really cool when I first got Zelda. Well, I didn't buy it. I was at a friend's house for school, and he and I both learned that we really like Nintendo. And they said, "Here are all my Nintendo games." And I was like, "Wow, so cool." I saw like a video on Zelda. I didn't really watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, "Oh, you have the Zelda game. I've heard about it." It's like, "You know what? You can keep it." I was like, "Oh, wow, thanks." So I just plugged it into my Switch, and
Is that the original? The original
no,
Zelda,
no,
or is
no,
that
no. It was
which
Breath
one
of
was
the
it?
Wild, actually.
Oh, okay. So it's Breath of the Wild.
So I've also seen a lot of like stuff on Zelda. So
Yeah.
I saw like Vaughn Meadow in the distance
Yeah.
off the Great Plateau. And I
It's
was
incredible.
like, "Oh, look, it's like that thing." Of course, I was talking about the Skyloft and like Skyward Sword, but
So you got wrapped in through Breath of the Wild and then started to play all the other games
yeah.
as well. Well, that's awesome, Cole. Thanks for sharing that. And it's always through a friend. A friend tells you about the game. That's how I got wrapped into the original Zelda in 1987. I was only like 5 or 6 years old, but I bought it like a couple years later. I had my cousin share with me the game. I played it at his house, and I just had to get a Nintendo. So it took me a while to get a Nintendo and to get the original Zelda. If you are old like me, you remember blowing out the cartridge time and time again to make sure the thing worked. Okay, so that's a little bit about Cole and about his love for Zelda. I kind of have him on as a featured guest today. One, to build our Zelda content because I do want there to be more Zelda content on this pastoral channel. But secondly, I thought that Cole could kind of share it with us. He watched the top 10 videos of the top 10 Zelda game video that I did last year, and he's got a little bit of his own version of the top games, but I have him doing a top 5 for us. So Colt, give me your top 5 Zelda games from the Zelda franchise and one reason why it's on your list where it's at. Okay, so what's number 5?
All right, number 5 for me is definitely Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah, recent game, more recent
More
game.
recent.
So why Hyrule Warriors? It's a little different from traditional Zelda games.
Well, yeah. Well, I really like the fighting aspect. You get to take on thousands of bokoblins, but you still have the storyline aspect of the game.
Yeah.
Still a mission. It's not just mindless.
Yeah, it's mission based. It's a little bit like if you're used to playing Dynasty Warriors. If you ever played Dynasty Warriors, you know these old Konami game. There's a little bit of that kind of mentality to it. So it's really fun because it's like just destroying goblins at a whim. But there's a storyline, there's a mission. The bosses are really hard actually to beat as well. So number 4, you wrote down what?
Oh, what did I put? I put Twilight Princess.
Yeah, so tell us about why Twilight Princess, because that's a lesser known game of the whole canon of Zelda, and it makes your top 4. So why is it number 4 for you?
What dragged me into liking Twilight Princess was it had the original like Link look to it. Like, yeah, it just has the normal green tuning.
Yeah.
But the world is like warped.
Yeah.
With all these shadow monsters.
Yeah, shadow monsters. Yeah, it's kind of a traditional game, but it's got kind of a It's a little darker themed of a
Yeah,
game too.
definitely.
Yeah, it's a little darker themed. Which I think will also be like Breath of the Wild too, a little
Yeah, I
darker.
think so.
Yeah, great man. So number 3, another recent game as well. You put down what?
Skyward Sword.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call that recent for me.
yeah, not recent for you, but recent in the canon of games. So why do you love Skyward Sword? It's a kind of a challenging game in many ways to play.
So as a Switch fan, I play Switch a lot, and when you play Switch, your equipment gets worn out.
Yeah.
It definitely gets tired of what you're putting it through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I had to replace my Joy-Cons the day before Skyward Sword released, and I had planned for a while to get Skyward Sword. So I called Nintendo, and
Dedicated, man.
I was like, "Oh, these controllers I have, they're broken," but I had replaced most of the stuff in them with at-home parts.
Beautiful.
So my parents were proud of me, so they got me new Joy-Cons.
Wow.
So I pre-ordered Skyward Sword, and
Wow. Proud of
I
you.
played it.
I'm really, really proud of you. There's a great hustle behind that game for you that you hustled for it. Really, it's
Sound like my parents.
it's impressive, man. I'm very
Yeah.
proud of you about that. Number 2, an older, kind of middle of the canon time period. Number 2, you put down what?
Ocarina of Time.
All right, so the original N64, the N64 game with its kind of huge world storyline. So why did you put that one down as number 2 so high?
There's a lot of like stuff, and it opened up the world of 3D game.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons, but that's not really my reason. My reason is the insane amount that comes with the result of the game.
Yeah.
You can go, so there's the adult timeline,
Yes.
which ends in if you die, the sages seal Ganon without you.
Yeah.
If you win, they seal Ganon's dead body.
That's right. That's right.
And if you win, you go back in time as a child, and there's no winning or losing.
It's pretty legit. I love the multiple storylines and chronology of the game too, along with just the incredible world and the many storylines that kind of link together, and also the kind of precursor storyline to the original game is pretty amazing too. So it's kind of one of those showstopper games that it was the most popular game when I was a kid, and for a long time, and it has legitimized itself as, well, I think one of the greatest Nintendo games of all time. So, of course, number 1, not a hard answer. It's Breath of the Wild for both of us,
Yeah.
both top 10s. I think had Ocarina of Time as number 2 and Breath of the Wild is number 1, so we're kind of on the same page about that. But Breath of the Wild, we wanted to share, we don't really need to give, I think, the reason. I think it's pretty obvious, but we wanted to share quickly the top 10 enemies of all time. Cole has his own top 10 list, and just for time's sake, we'll be quick, but tell me at least, doesn't have to be in a particular order perfectly, but your top 10 enemies or villains in the Zelda canon of all time, because that would be kind of fun to add to the content.
5 are definitely mini bosses.
Okay.
So I actually, the 10th enemy is definitely Lizalfos.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
just scattered around the map in Breath of the Wild. And, I mean, classic character for Breath of the Wild.
Great character, and lots of different variations of that character as well, in all the different settings and locations. What's your number 9?
Number 9 would have to be Palaces, because
okay, yeah.
they're cute, but I hate Frost Palaces.
They're hard to beat. They're really hard to beat. Number 8.
Number 8. What's that? 8. 7. Got a lot more. Lynels.
Oh man, I put them higher. They're super intimidating to me, especially when you hit up the white ones.
And if you've played Master Mode.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Hit the gold one. Oh wow. It's just nuts. So Lionel's number 8. What's number 7?
7. He's gonna be Moblin.
Moblins. Okay.
So the first 5 that I'm saying here are kind of like,
they're like mini enemies. Yeah, mini enemies. And Moblins are really challenging, especially when you're kind of weak in the game. Like where you're weaker in the game, you're facing the moblins, they actually are incredibly difficult to beat. Now, when you get stronger, of course, you can kill these guys fairly easily. But earlier on in the game, when you're a weaker character and you haven't leveled up and your health is weak, you can't do very much to them, and you have to kind of avoid them. So what's number 6?
Number 6,
Mini boss.
top for mini bosses is definitely the Bokoblin.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just the most iconic because you see it all across your Great Plateau.
Yeah. Well, I really like
everywhere.
I really like that you put in mini bosses based upon how iconic they are too, not just how fierce they are, because they are kind of one of the most recognizable enemies in the entire canon since the very beginning. Goblins and moblins were basically the entire enemies. Most of the time. So that's great, Cole. I love that.
Was like a gigantic
moblin. Yeah, I love it. See, this is why we got this guy on here. This is legit. Okay, now give us their actual top 5, maybe your more traditional bosses now.
Yeah. So obviously, we're gonna have to put Skyward Sword bosses up there.
Yes.
There's just so many because you have to beat them to get the flames. And
how many are you gonna put in your top 5 from Skyward Sword 3? How many are you gonna put in there?
No.
Okay.
2 in particular are my favorite. I like I don't know his name, but he has like the 6 arms and he has gigantic swords.
Yeah.
You have to use the whip to get the swords to cut them. It's very difficult to beat that one.
So the Skyward Sword boss with many arms, many swords, and definitely a challenge. I haven't beaten that game, so I haven't made it to him yet. So what's your number 4?
Number 4 is gonna have to be Calamity Ganon from Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Yep.
The boss battles in Breath of the Wild weren't like as hype.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I had hoped, and kind of disappointing. But I've spent a lot of time on Breath of the Wild.
Well, I think Calamity Ganon is. There are certain things about him that are challenging. I think he's physically imposing, and those things. But the reality is, the game is definitely much more about the adventure than it is about the old school kind of like level enemies that you would face, the temple bosses and stuff like that. So he's not as challenging to beat even as some of the temple bosses, to be honest. Especially when you face him, you're like super you're souped up. It's hard for you to lose. So who else should be in your top 3 here?
Top 3, we're gonna have to put Girahim.
Yeah. Okay.
Girahim is really fun to fight.
Awesome.
Because he's very arrogant, and when you beat him, you just get that satisfaction.
Yeah, it feels good to beat Girahim. That's awesome. That's a great one. Because bosses should be hard to beat, and when you beat them, it should take a little bit of work, and you should feel satisfied after it like that. It's good. Number 2.
Number 2, I'm gonna have to say it's a tough choice between the last 2. I'm gonna say Demise.
Yeah, Demise. Yeah, that's great. Great answer. I love that one. And what's your number 1 boss?
Number 1 boss, Ganondorf from Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
It's just a very big battle scene between him and Ganondorf.
Ganondorf, kind of before he became Ganon, Calamity Ganon.
This last one, I actually have a lot to say. For those of you that have seen the new Breath of the Wild trailer.
Yes.
Obviously,
the second one, Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah. He's dead, obviously.
Or is he?
Yeah, is he being resurrected? And you can tell that the Great Hand's just holding him up and healing him, because he's been stabbed. And that stab wound, I believe, is from Twilight Princess.
Whoa, wait, what? Are you connecting the lore of Zelda in this moment to Breath of the Wild 2?
Yeah, so in Twilight Princess...
There's a Zelda prophecy going on here.
Does anybody know how Ganondorf died in Twilight Princess?
Clearly, only the hardcore Zelda people would know that answer, Cole. But this is why you were featured and they are not.
Stabbed in the heart.
It's beautiful.
By the Master Sword.
It's beautiful. Cole, thank you.
And in that exact spot, the Green Hand is holding him up.
It's incredible. It's incredible. I think why you see we have Cole featured on this episode is because he's not only telling you factual things, He almost is prophetically talking about Zelda, the lore and the chronology, all intertwined in the story. And it brings us to our final point, Breath of the Wild 2. Breath of the Wild 2, if you've seen the trailer, I think there are two now, right? Aren't there two trailers of it? There are two trailers have been out, and at least Nintendo's on the production team, and the creator is on record saying they're trying to get it released by the end of 2022, which always means probably not. but
Yeah.
but we're hoping that by Christmas it is, and Cole's birthday's in the fall. We're hoping it'll coincide with that. But again, this is a massive game. It looks to be a little darker than the first one,
It's
which
gonna
is
be
a
like
good,
a
probably a
Majora's
good
Mask
thing.
situation.
Yeah, kind of a little bit like that.
Ross has requested that I share my amount of Zelda
Yes.
time.
Okay, yeah. Let's finish with this, since we're about right at time. We want to, typically when people are interviewed or consulted, on shows, they have a list of credentials that are given. And so I wanted Cole to share how many hours he has played just on Breath of the Wild. Now that we could get a little carried away here on all the other games too, but just on Breath of the Wild, what does your Switch tell you the hours that you have logged? For your credentials as a featured guest this afternoon.
Well, this is something I tell a lot of people because my mom and dad force me to.
It's good. It's a way of being accountable. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 620 hours
It's incredible. I'm really.
spent
It's
playing
just
Breath of the
absolutely
Wild.
incredible. I mean, if you break that down, I mean, we're not super gifted at math here. I mean, I've got books. I'm not a mathematician here, but if I take 24 and divide it into that 600, I mean, you're roughly coming away with what, like 30 days.
A lot of days.
I mean, isn't that like a month of your life? I mean, you're only 13. I mean, if we take the 13 years, and then of course there's 12 months in that. Again, that's what 256. 256, I think. And then you put 256, and then you subtract 30. Like that's like 5% of your life or something. I mean, the math is probably a little weird here, but I think that might be 5% of your life you've played Breath of the Wild only. That's not even including the maybe all the other games you've played totally. But
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is Cole is very qualified to be a Zelda consultant on this channel. So
I might
Cole,
be making a channel.
I'm super, super proud of you, man. You should make your own channel.
I might.
We could cross-reference one another moving forward.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on, my man. We are trying to up our content for Zelda, as you can tell. Not only good theology, good reading, good sources, good books, things like that. But we also want to up our pop culture content as well. Zelda being one of my favorite things, my favorite game of all time. Cole, I appreciate you being on today, man. Thanks for coming. Signing off.